The fluorescent lights of Harper's Drugstore flickered, casting a sterile glow over the quiet aisles of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. It was 2025, and Daniel Harper, 48, stood frozen in the doorway, clutching a dog-eared photo from 2001, Three Tiny Faces. His triplets, stolen from him in a haze of heartbreak and betrayal. His chest tightened as he saw them now, grown, laughing behind the counter, unaware of the man whose world had shattered without them. Daniel's life had been a mosaic of loss, stitched together with fragile threads of hope. In 2001, he was a young father, openly gay in a small town that didn't know how to handle it. His partner, Ethan, had been his anchor until the night Ethan's addiction spiraled, and Daniel's world unraveled. Ethan's sister, Claire, a woman with a vendetta sharper than a blade, took the triplets Lila, Noah, and Caleb, claiming Daniel was unfit. She vanished with them, leaving no trace, no note, just an empty crib and a court order that branded Daniel a stranger to his own children. For 24 years, he'd searched, chasing whispers and dead ends, his heart a battlefield of guilt and longing. Now, here they were, in this drugstore, restocking shelves with the casual ease of siblings who'd grown up together. Lila's auburn hair caught the light as she teased Noah, who grinned, his glasses slipping down his nose. Caleb, quieter, sorted receipts with a focus that mirrored Daniel's own. They were 24 now, adults with lives Daniel knew nothing about. His knees buckled at the thought, what if they hate me? What if they don't remember? He stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming like a warning. Lila glanced up, her smile polite but distant. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her voice soft but guarded. Daniel's throat closed. He wanted to say, "I'm your father. I've loved you every day since you were born." But the words stayed trapped, heavy as the years between them. Instead, he mumbled, "Just looking for some aspirin." His eyes darted to the photo in his hand, then back to her face. The resemblance was undeniable, her hazel eyes, Noah's dimpled chin, Caleb's quiet intensity. They were his, but they weren't. Not yet. Willow Creek was a town that held its secrets close, and Daniel knew unearthing the truth would be like pulling roots from stone. Claire had raised them. That much he'd pieced together from a private investigator's tip. She'd moved here years ago, feeding the triplets lies about their deadbeat father. Daniel's jaw clenched at the thought. He'd fought for them through court battles, sleepless nights, and the ache of Ethan's absence after he overdosed in 2003. But Claire's narrative had won, painting Daniel as the villain in a story he'd never been allowed to tell. He wandered the aisles, pretending to browse, stealing glances at his children. Noah was explaining something to Caleb, his hands animated, while Lila rang up a customer with a warmth that made Daniel's heart ache. They were a unit, a family within themselves. Did they even need him? The question gnawed at him as he approached the counter, the aspirin bottle a flimsy excuse in his hand. "Find what you needed?" Noah asked, adjusting his glasses. His voice was kind, but there was a wariness in his eyes, like he sensed something off. Daniel nodded, his pulse hammering. He wanted to ask about their lives, their dreams, their memories. Did they know about him? Did they know he'd never stopped looking? As Lila bagged the aspirin, her gaze lingered on him, a flicker of curiosity in her expression. "You're not from around here, are you?" she said, more a statement than a question. Daniel hesitated, the weight of 24 years pressing down. "No, he said softly. But I used to be. He left the store, the bell chiming again, and stood on the sidewalk, the photo trembling in his hand. The triplets were alive, together, and so close he could almost touch them. But the distance between them wasn't just years, it was a chasm of lies, pain, and unspoken love. Daniel knew he couldn't walk away. Not again. He'd find a way to reach them, to tell them the truth, even if it meant unraveling everything they thought they knew. That night, he checked into a motel on the edge of town, the neon sign buzzing like his thoughts. He spread out old letters, court documents, and photos on the bed, pieces of a life stolen from him. The investigator had warned him Claire was still in Willow Creek, a pillar of the community, her influence deep. Confronting her would be a war, and the triplets might not believe him. But Daniel had spent 24 years fighting for them in silence. He wasn't silent anymore. The next morning, Daniel sat in a diner across from Harper's Drugstore, nursing a coffee that had gone cold. Through the window, he watched Lila open the shop, her movements efficient but graceful, like she was dancing through a routine she'd done 1,000 times. He wondered what she dreamed of, whether she carried the same restless spirit he'd had at her age. Noah arrived next, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and Caleb followed, head down, lost in thought. They were so different, yet so connected, and Daniel felt a pang of pride mixed with grief. He'd spent the night mapping out a plan. Charging in with the truth would backfire. Claire's lies had had 24 years to take root. He needed to build trust, to learn who they were before he could reveal who he was. The investigator had given him a lead. The triplets worked part-time at the drugstore while pursuing their own paths. Lila was studying nursing. Noah was an aspiring writer. And Caleb, the quietest, was a painter with a knack for capturing raw emotion on canvas. Daniel clung to these details like lifelines, proof that his children had grown into people he'd love to know. He returned to the drugstore that afternoon, this time with a purpose. The bell chimed, and Noah looked up from the counter, his smile cautious but friendly. "Back for more aspirin?" he asked, a teasing edge to his voice. Daniel chuckled, forcing ease into his tone. "Something like that. Actually, I'm new in town. Thought I'd get to know the place. You work here long?" Noah shrugged, leaning against the counter. "Couple of years. It's just me, my sister, and my brother keeping this place from falling apart." He nodded toward Lila, who was restocking bandages, and Caleb, who was sweeping the back aisle. "Sounds like a family business," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "Something like that," Noah replied, his eyes narrowing slightly, like he was trying to place Daniel's face. Over the next week, Daniel became a regular. He'd buy small things, bandages, soda, a pack of gum, each visit a chance to learn more. Lila was the talker, her warmth drawing him in as she shared stories about customers or her nursing classes. Noah was witty, his humor sharp but kind, often slipping into tangents about books he loved. Caleb was harder to reach, his responses short, but Daniel noticed the way his eyes softened when Lila laughed or Noah rambled. They were a family, bound by something deeper than blood, a shared history Daniel wasn't part of. One evening, as the store was closing, Lila invited him to stay for a coffee they brewed in the back. It was a small gesture, but to Daniel, it felt like a door cracking open. They sat around a wobbly table, the triplets joking about their Aunt Claire, who'd raised them after their parents died. The word aunt hit Daniel like a punch. Claire had erased him completely. rewriting their story to make herself the hero. Do you ever wonder about them? Daniel asked, his voice low, testing the waters. Your parents. I mean. Lila's smile faltered, and Noah exchanged a glance with Caleb. Not really, Lila said after a pause. Claire said they weren't worth knowing. We were better off. Caleb's jaw tightened, and he looked away, his fingers tracing the edge of his cup. Daniel's heart sank, but he pressed on. Careful. Sometimes people get it wrong. Sometimes there's more to the story. Noah raised an eyebrow, curious but guarded. You sound like you know something about it. Daniel's pulse quickened. He wanted to tell them everything, the love he and Ethan had poured into them, the nights he'd spent searching, the pain of being deemed unfit because of who he loved. But he saw the walls in their eyes, the loyalty to Claire, the life they'd built. He couldn't shatter it. Not yet. Just a thought, he said, forcing a smile. You three seem like you turned out okay. Though. Lila laughed, easing the tension, but Caleb's gaze lingered on him, sharp and searching. Daniel left that night with a mix of hope and dread. He was getting closer, but the truth was a tightrope, and one wrong step could send them running. Daniel's days settled into a rhythm, mornings at the diner, afternoons at the drugstore, evenings piecing together fragments of the triplets' lives. He learned their quirks, Lila's habit of humming while she worked, Noah's love for sci-fi novels, Caleb's quiet obsession with sketching customers when they weren't looking. Each detail felt like a gift, but it also deepened the ache of all he'd missed. He started leaving small traces of himself, testing their reactions. One day, he brought in a copy of The Martian, knowing Noah loved it. Thought you might like this, he said, sliding it across the counter. Noah's eyes lit up, and they spent 10 minutes debating the book's ending. Daniel savoring every word like a father hearing his son's voice for the first time. With Lila, he connected over her nursing dreams, sharing stories of his own volunteer work at a community clinic years ago. She listened, her guard lowering. And once, she admitted she wanted to work with kids, to give them the care she'd always craved. Daniel's heart twisted had Claire neglected them. He didn't ask, but the question burned. Caleb was the hardest. He'd watched Daniel from a distance, his sketches growing darker, more intense. One afternoon, Daniel caught a glimpse of Caleb's sketchbook, a portrait of a man with tired eyes, eerily like himself. That's really good, Daniel said, pointing to the drawing. Caleb snapped the book shut, his face unreadable. It's nothing, he muttered, but his voice held a tremor. Outside the drugstore, Daniel's investigation deepened. The private investigator had dug up Claire's address, a tidy house on the edge of town. Daniel drove by one evening, his stomach churning as he saw her through the window. Older but unmistakable, her sharp features unchanged. She'd built a life here, a lie wrapped in respectability. He wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but he knew it would risk everything. The triplets trusted her. He needed them to trust him first. One night, a storm rolled through Willow Creek, and the drugstore's power flickered. Daniel stayed late, helping the triplets close up, their laughter cutting through the rain's drumbeat. As they locked the doors, Noah turned to him. You're around a lot. Daniel, what's your deal? The question caught him off guard, and he scrambled for an answer. Just starting over, he said. Lost a lot back in the day, trying to find something worth holding on to. Lila tilted her head, her eyes soft. You sound like you've got a story. Don't we all? Daniel replied, his voice thick. Caleb watched him, silent, and Daniel felt the weight of his son's gaze like a judgment. Back at the motel, Daniel found a letter slipped under his door anonymously written. The words chilling, "Stop digging. They're not yours anymore." His blood ran cold. Claire knew he was here. The game had just gotten dangerous. The letter haunted Daniel, its words looping in his mind as he watched the triplets from the diner the next day. Claire's threat was clear. She'd fight to keep her version of the truth intact. But Daniel wasn't the scared 24-year-old she'd outmaneuvered in 2001. He'd lost too much to back down now. He doubled down on building trust. He started helping at the drugstore, stocking shelves, fixing a leaky faucet, even teaching Noah how to balance the books. The triplets began to rely on him, their wariness softening into something like friendship. Lila started calling him Dan, a nickname that felt like a lifeline. Noah shared drafts of his writing, raw stories about identity and loss that hit Daniel too close to home. Caleb remained distant. But one day, he left a sketch on the counter, a delicate drawing of the drugstore's front, with Daniel's silhouette in the doorway. It wasn't an invitation, but it was a start. Outside the store, Daniel dug deeper. The investigator uncovered court records from 2001, showing how Claire had manipulated the system, using Daniel's sexuality and Ethan's addiction to paint them as unfit. She'd forged documents, bribed a judge, and disappeared with the triplets before Daniel could appeal. The betrayal stung anew, but it fueled him. He started gathering evidence, letters, photos, even a DNA test kit he kept hidden, waiting for the right moment. One evening, Lila invited him to a local art show where Caleb's paintings were on display. The gallery was small but packed, the air thick with chatter and wine. Caleb's work was stunning canvases bursting with color, each one a window into his quiet intensity. One painting stopped Daniel cold, 3 children holding hands, their faces blurred, standing in a field under a stormy sky. The title read, "What We Lost." "You okay, Dan?" Lila asked, noticing his expression. He nodded, his throat tight. "It's powerful. He's got a gift." Caleb overheard, his eyes meeting Daniel's for a moment before he looked away. Later, as they walked back to the drugstore, Caleb spoke, his voice low. "Why do you care so much about us? I mean..." Daniel froze, the truth clawing at his chest. He wanted to tell them, "I am your father. I've always cared." But Claire's letter loomed, and he saw the fragility in Caleb's question. "You remind me of someone I lost," he said finally. "Someone I'd give anything to see again." Caleb didn't respond, but his silence felt different, less hostile. Daniel clung to that shift, knowing he was running out of time. Claire's influence was a shadow over everything, and he sensed her watching, waiting for him to make a wrong move. The tension in Willow Creek thickened as summer faded into fall. Daniel's presence at the drugstore was no longer questioned. Lila, Noah, and Caleb had woven him into their routine, their trust growing like ivy around his heart. But Claire's letter was a constant reminder. The truth could destroy everything. He needed proof, something undeniable, before he could tell them who he was. He started asking subtle questions, probing their past. Lila mentioned growing up in foster homes before Claire rescued them, her voice tinged with gratitude. Noah spoke of Claire's strict rules, her insistence on cutting ties with their past. Caleb said little, but his paintings told a story of longing, of questions unanswered. Daniel's heart broke with every detail, knowing Claire had built their love for her on lies. One afternoon, While helping Lila reorganize the stockroom, Daniel found a box of old photos Claire with the triplets as kids. Their faces bright, but their eyes distant. One photo showed Lila holding a stuffed bear Daniel had given her in 2001. He nearly dropped the box, his hands shaking. "Where'd you get this?" he asked, his voice tight. Lila glanced at it, shrugging. "Been with me forever." "Why?" "It's familiar," he said, his mind racing. The bear was proof, a thread connecting their past to him. He slipped the photo into his pocket, guilt gnawing at him, but necessity driving him forward. That night, he met with the investigator, who'd found a retired social worker willing to talk. She confirmed Claire's manipulation, revealing how she'd falsified records to adopt the triplets. The social worker's testimony could reopen the case, but it would mean dragging the triplets through a legal battle. Daniel hesitated, torn between justice and their peace. Back at the drugstore, the triplets were planning a community event, a fundraiser for the local hospital. Lila was in charge, her passion infectious as she rallied Noah and Caleb. Daniel volunteered to help, seeing it as a chance to grow closer. During a late-night planning session, Noah opened up about his struggles with his identity, hinting at his own queerness. "Claire doesn't get it," he said, his voice low. "She thinks it's a phase." Daniel's heart ached, seeing his son wrestle with the same judgment he'd faced. "You're enough, Noah," he said, his voice steady. "Exactly as you are." Noah looked at him, surprised. And for the first time, Daniel felt a spark of connection, fragile but real. But the spark was short-lived. The next day, Claire appeared at the drugstore, her presence like a storm cloud. She eyed Daniel with cold recognition, her voice sharp. "You're causing trouble, aren't you?" she said when the triplets were out of earshot. Daniel stood his ground. "I'm here for them, not you." Her smile was venomous. "They don't need you. They never did." Claire's confrontation lit a fire under Daniel. He couldn't let her control the narrative any longer. He spent days gathering evidence, court documents, the social worker's testimony, the photo of Lila's bear. He even tracked down an old friend of Ethan's who confirmed Claire's lies about Daniel's unfitness. The truth was coming together, but it was a fragile house of cards, and the triplets were still in the dark. At the fundraiser, Willow Creek buzzed with energy. Lila led with confidence. Noah charmed the crowd with his wit, and Caleb's paintings were a silent draw, raising thousands. Daniel worked behind the scenes, setting up tables and running errands, his heart swelling with pride. For a moment, he felt like their father, even if they didn't know it. After the event, the triplets invited him to a bonfire at their house, Claire's house. It was a risk, but Daniel went, knowing it might be his only chance to see their world. The house was modest but warm, filled with traces of their lives, books, art, medical textbooks. Claire was absent, a small mercy, and the night felt like a gift. They sat around the fire, sharing stories, and Daniel let himself imagine a future where he belonged here. Then Caleb spoke, his voice cutting through the laughter. "Why do you keep coming back, Dan? What do you want from us?" The question hung in the air, heavy with suspicion. Lila and Noah looked at him, waiting. Daniel's heart pounded, was so close to telling them, but fear held him back. "I care about you," he said, his voice raw. "More than you know." Caleb's eyes narrowed, but Lila reached out, touching his arm. "He's okay, Caleb. Let it go." The moment passed, but the tension lingered. Daniel knew he couldn't wait much longer. The next day, he met with a lawyer to discuss his options. The social worker's testimony was strong, but without the triplets' support, a legal fight could alienate them forever. He needed them to choose him, to believe him over Claire. Back at the drugstore, he found Caleb alone, sketching in the back. Daniel took a chance, pulling out the photo of the bear. "This was yours," he said, his voice steady. "I gave it to Lila when she was a baby, before you were taken." Caleb froze, his pencil hovering. "Taken?" he whispered, his voice sharp. Daniel nodded, his heart in his throat. "There's a lot you don't know. About your past. About me." Caleb's face hardened, but he didn't walk away. It was the first crack in the wall, and Daniel knew he had to tread carefully. Caleb's reaction stayed with Daniel, a fragile hope amid the storm. He knew he'd planted a seed, but it could just as easily grow into distrust as truth. He spent the next few days giving Caleb space, focusing on Lila and Noah, who were planning a second fundraiser. Their energy was infectious, and Daniel found himself laughing more, feeling like he was part of something real. But Claire's shadow loomed, and he sensed her tightening her grip. One evening, Noah pulled Daniel aside, his expression serious. "Caleb told us what you said. About the bear. What's going on, Dan?" Daniel's stomach dropped. He hadn't planned to tell them yet, but the moment was here. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "I knew you when you were babies, before Claire took you. I've been looking for you ever since." Noah's eyes widened, and Lila, overhearing, joined them, her face a mix of confusion and curiosity. "What do you mean? Knew us?" she asked. Daniel's voice trembled as he told them the truth, how he and Ethan had loved them, how Claire had torn them away, how he'd fought for 24 years to find them. He showed them the photo, the court documents, the bear. Lila's eyes filled with tears, and Noah's jaw clenched. But Caleb, who'd been listening from the doorway, exploded. "You're lying," he shouted, his voice raw. "Claire raised us. She's our family. You're just some guy?" "Caleb, please," Daniel said, his heart breaking. "I'm your father." The word hung in the air, a bomb detonating their fragile trust. Lila gasped. Noah froze, and Caleb stormed out, slamming the door. Daniel felt the world tilt, the years of searching crashing down. He'd lost them again. Lila touched his arm, her voice soft. "Give him time, Dan. This is a lot." Noah nodded, his eyes searching Daniel's face. "If you're telling the truth, we need proof. Real proof." Daniel spent the night gathering everything: DNA test results, the social worker's affidavit, Ethan's old letters. He left them in an envelope at the drugstore, his heart in his throat. The next day, Lila called him, her voice shaky. "We read it. All of it. We want to talk." They met at the diner, the triplets sitting across from him, their faces a mix of anger, confusion, and hope. Lila spoke first. "Why didn't you find us sooner?" Daniel's voice broke as he explained the courts, Claire's lies, his own grief. Noah listened, his skepticism softening. But Caleb remained silent, his arms crossed. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "If you're our dad, why didn't you fight harder?" The question cut deep, but Daniel met his gaze. "I never stopped fighting. I just didn't know where to find you." The diner meeting was a turning point, but not a resolution. The triplets agreed to a DNA test, their trust fragile but growing. Daniel waited, each day an eternity, as they processed the truth. He saw them less at the drugstore, their absence a quiet ache, but he held on to hope. When the results came back, confirming he was their father, Lila called him, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's true," she said. "You're our dad." They met at the park, the air crisp with autumn. Lila hugged him first, her tears soaking his shoulder. Noah followed, his embrace hesitant but real. Caleb hung back, his eyes guarded, but he didn't leave. It was enough. Claire's reckoning came quietly. The triplets confronted her with the evidence, their voices steady as they demanded answers. She crumbled, admitting her lies, her fear of losing them. They didn't forgive her, but they didn't cut her out, not yet. She'd raised them, for better or worse, and that bond was theirs to untangle. Daniel moved to Willow Creek permanently, renting a small apartment near the drugstore. He didn't push, letting the triplets set the pace. Lila visited often, sharing stories of her nursing dreams. Noah sent him drafts of his writing, asking for feedback. Caleb was slower, but one day, he showed up with a painting, a portrait of Daniel, his face lined with love and loss. "I don't know how to do this," Caleb said, his voice soft, "but I'm trying." Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "That's all I've ever wanted." The triplets began calling him Dad, the word a quiet miracle. They weren't a family, yet not fully, but they were building one, piece by piece. Daniel knew the road ahead would be messy, full of questions and healing. But he'd walked through 24 years of darkness to find them. He could walk a little longer. One evening, they sat together at the drugstore. The lights dim, the air warm with laughter. Lila leaned against Noah. Caleb sketched in the corner, and Daniel watched, his heart full. They were his, and he was theirs, not because of blood, but because of love, fierce, flawed, and unbreakable.